Welcome to Top Advisor Marketing, where you will learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your practice. Brought to you by Top Advisor Podcasting, a done-for-you podcasting solution built just for trusted advisors. And now, your co-hosts of Top Advisor Marketing, Kirk Lowe and Matt Halloran.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing podcast. Today, Kirk Lowe and I are going to talk about the 4 steps to the perfect marketing strategy. Now, Kirk, when we were talking about doing this podcast, there was a word that we both decided that we needed to define right out of the gate, which is the word perfect. And you took some pretty kick-ass notes here. When you talk to advisors and they talk about the perfect marketing strategy, what words are they using or how do you define that?
Well, I think every advisor will have their own ideas, but I'm guessing most of these ones that I've put here will resonate with them, certainly more than others. But everybody will have their own list. And I just brought this list to you, so it'd be nice for you to add some of your thoughts too as we go along here. But I guess for me, what I think advisors are looking for, in my experience, are less time and effort put into their marketing. That's a pretty good thing, right? Advisors are pretty busy fighting other fires and with other huge accountabilities. So that's a big one. Yeah, more synergy. I don't know if this really gets talked about a lot, but I think it's huge because I think synergy breeds efficiency and better outcomes. So I think synergy is a great thing. I don't think most advisors really ever think about synergy.
Well, hold on. Why don't you define that a little bit better? Because I think that's a buzzword that a lot of people try to throw around, but you know what synergy is when it comes to marketing. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, think of everything that you do should have versatility. In other words, it can be used in different ways or broken up potentially. Not only that, but it should be something that's easy to share and put out to more people. And if it's not, then it's not a very good marketing item to begin with, right? If you do something one place, it's almost like the idea of having a seminar and one person showing up, or having a client, talking to a client about something and not being able to leverage it to share with more people. Mm-hmm. Like if you've ever watched Gary Vaynerchuk or any big influencer on LinkedIn as an example, they leverage one thing in so many different ways, and their synergies that they create are unbelievable. Now everybody's going to say, Gary Vaynerchuk's a multimillionaire, blah, blah, blah. But he focused on trying to make everything synergistic because it grew his persona, his influence, his authority way quicker. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but synergy is huge.
Well, and quick is relative too, right? I mean, when you've got $1 million marketing budget and you are explosive, as Gary V is, he's going to get a lot more attention. The idea here is making sure from a perfect marketing strategy that you realize that perfect, in my opinion, doesn't mean that it's going to be super quick, right? I mean, the most effective marketing strategies, the most effective brands that exist, they started off small and slow and then grew and grew and grew. And that's where the synergy happens. That's where all of the pieces start coming together. It doesn't happen immediately. And I think our clients specifically are historically quite impatient and are really looking for something that happens right out of the gate. I want to jump into something else that you had said here when it came to the overall idea of perfection, because you said less time, more synergy. I want to add that most advisors think that the perfect marketing strategy, they don't have to do it. So if they're going to look at perfection, I'm going to outsource this to somebody else and they're going to do all of my marketing for me. I'm not trying to jump ahead, but you and I talk about this a lot offline. Can we talk about that a little bit before we dive into these?
You added 2 great points there, right? The first one was explosive, and I wrote it in our list here for somebody's doing show notes for us. But explosive marketing is really neat idea. Like, how do you make a real impact? And I'm going to talk about branding a little bit later, but that's really important. How do you make an impression? And then you said someone else does it. That's obviously huge. delegated marketing is a good thing for most advisors in a whole bunch of different ways. Right? I was talking to an advisor yesterday who was inquiring about getting our help, and he said, "How much?" And I said, "It's this much." And he said, I'm going to have to run that by my wife. I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, what I'm going to tell her," and I didn't cue him up on this, and it was wonderful. He said, "I'm going to tell her that I could either go hire a marketing person or a marketing team to do this, or I could hire these guys." And he said, "What do you think it would cost me to hire a marketing team to do this strategy?" I said, "Well, yeah, it's probably, this much for this person, that much for the other person." And he said, "So you're really about 30% of the cost of them. And you guys have 20, 30, 40 years of experience and all kinds of talent that I would never be able." He said, "This is a no-brainer. My wife is going to say yes." And I thought it was really cool that, and I hear this a fair amount, actually. Advisors, obviously, there's way more male advisors, so it's usually, the conversations usually get around this stuff by my wife. Although I've never heard any of our women advisors say they have to run this by their husband.
It's so funny that you said that. I was just thinking about that. I was like, I don't honestly think I've ever had one of our female clients say, "I need to run this by my husband," which is, well, that shows you who wears the pants. Well, let's. There's another focus thing here that I want to talk about when it comes to perfection, because it has a lot to do with who does what, which is, you said less on your list here, less of who are you. What does that mean?
Yeah, which goes with the next one, which is more "I love you."
Okay.
Less who are you? We get those when we get an obscure introduction from somebody who didn't really tee us up. They haven't, I went to your website for 30 seconds. What do you guys do again? Somebody told me I should really be working with you. Those ones, as soon as they come, they just they drain your energy, right? Because you're like, "Oh, I'm going to have to go through this." It's not a big deal. It's a good thing. But when somebody comes, like this guy we were talking about yesterday, said, "I feel like I'm talking to a star. Like you're like famous, man. I've been listening to all your podcasts. You're all over, you're all over LinkedIn and blah, blah, blah." And I was laughing, as somebody like me would. You'd be the same. It was fun. But the conversation wasn't, "How are you guys? Do you guys know your stuff? Are you any good?" It was, I've said this all the time, but it's one of the most important things about having a great brand and having good marketing, right? Is being able to embrace that kind of conversation versus another one. So less "who are you," more "I love you." Absolutely huge. When we talk about more ideal opportunities, and you've been interviewed on this a lot, especially when it comes to, really defining that Mick, my ideal client. How do you streamline that? When an advisor looks at perfection in marketing, they're saying, "I want to get my message in front of this person at this time." And I remember we had an old client who was actually an old coaching client of mine, a guy I just absolutely love. And he said, "Matt, there are people in the Philippines listening to my podcast. Why are they listening to the podcast?" And my answer to him was, "Well, because they like it." But that, Philippine people weren't his ideal client. Let's talk a little bit more about how that can be overcome. Wow, it's a great tee up here. We're jumping into stuff, but that's okay, because we said today, let's just let this one run, have a conversation. We actually contemplated whether or not we should have a pint of beer, and this would be like hanging out with Matt and Kirk while we're having a beer, but we decided against it.
That's because it's 11 a.m.
You're gonna make, oh yeah. We don't drink very often, so not really. Worried about it developing into a problem. But we're podcasting. I need a 6-pack. Everybody knows I'm Canadian, and we all get affiliated with being big, heavy beer drinkers, but not true. Mostly. So I can't remember the question now.
The question.
See, that's what it would be like if we brought that into the equation. Yeah. I'd be lost all the time. But that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, that's honestly, that's my entire job here. So it's the ideal of getting in front of more ideal opportunities.
Yeah, having a great story is the first thing. So having a niche audience. We're really jumping into some stuff here, but it's good. When you're talking on your podcast, the more specific you are, the more self-qualifying people can do. Oh, he's talking about that. Yeah, that really resonates. You know what? That's not really me. I don't really have those issues. I don't, and that it's self-qualifying marketing. And there's so many advisors I meet that are like so terrified of, I don't want a niche market because I really don't want to give up these other opportunities. Well, if what you're doing, if you go after a very tight niche, okay, and you do really well in that niche, you create a lot of value, you're going to have a lot of success. It doesn't necessarily mean other people aren't going to resonate with what you're doing and work with you, or you're going to get referrals. You know what? My friend so-and-so, he's not who I am, but what you do really resonates with him, and he has a lot of the same challenges. Then you can still work with them. Maybe when one vertical dries up, you switch to another because you're resonating with other people too. But you've identified a niche that you're going to go for. It makes it a lot easier for your marketing people to go achieve success for you. Makes it easier for you to create value, right? So your podcast, your personality, the things you talk about, the challenges that you overcome for people, those should all be self-qualifying. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's a huge thing. And what that's going to do, the positive part is you're going to get more ideal opportunities. And the positive of the negative of that is you're going to get less non-ideal distractions.
Sure.
Right. So this is part of having a great story, and having great marketing makes you way more referable. And not only more referable, but it teaches your clients. It teaches your clients how to better refer you and who to better refer you to. And you can make it way easier to refer people. I tell advisors all the time, are you more referable when you have a podcast or when you don't have a podcast?
Yeah. Or if you have a great story or if you don't have a great story. If you have good centers of influence or you don't have good centers of influence, right? Those are the sorts of things.
Or you have a white paper versus you don't have a white paper.
Yep.
Or you have a blog or you don't have a blog.
Yeah.
Right? And advisors I think referrals, how to get better referrals is unequivocally the most important thing to almost every advisor I've ever spoken to. Yet the things that make you more referable, or the things you would actually be able to have a guilt-free conversation or an awkward-free conversation about, would be, hey, I just released another episode of my podcast, and it's on estate planning for families with challenged children, mentally challenged kids.
Yeah, like special needs trusts. And
special needs, sorry, I said that the wrong way. So, and I know that because you probably have a group of friends in that, with other special needs kids and families, that you probably know those people. If you think any of those people would benefit from my podcast, I'll send you a link via email, or you can grab a link from your mobile device. If you know anybody that would benefit from it, would you mind sharing it? Because I think I'd love to get this message out, because I think too many of these families aren't getting it. They don't have enough help or specialized expertise. Do you think you could help? Oh, heck yes. I know at least 50. I'm going to a group thing the other day. I'm on the board of planning this event. Let me send it out. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Well, and Kirk, the best thing about it in that specific situation is it's not salesy at all, right? That's what people, when we interviewed Bill Cates for our little mini series that we did with him a little while ago, he's part of his whole thing is referrals, and one of the objections that he hears all the time is, Matt, I'm afraid that when I ask for referrals, I'm going to sound too salesy or I'm going to sound too pushy. Kirk, what you just did there, whether it is with a white paper, I mean, how great would that be to say, hey, if you don't want to listen to a podcast, I've got a great free white paper. Listen, I'm just going to give it to you. Please share it with everybody because it's got some very good actionable items to making sure that your family's going to be protected. Bam. I don't need to say, and if they want to make a free consultation with me, they can. That's where I think you take things too far. This is that courting process that you and I talk about a lot. But in order to have these easily handoutable things, right, you have to make an investment. And I was just on Kathleen Burns Kingsbury's podcast. We'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for this. and we were talking about money myths, right? And one of the big money myths that I think that I learned really from you is that people don't spend enough money on marketing. There's a 7% number where it really should be 15 to 20% of your gross, not net, spending on marketing. Very few advisors do that. But if you talk to the advisors who are absolutely killing it, they're spending north of 15% of their gross, not net, on marketing. Why, in your experience, do advisors balk so much against spending money to make money?
You know what? You know what's interesting? The advisors who spend the most money and who have the most success are, in my opinion, the ones who stuck with stuff. Like the ones that I know that spend the most money, they've been doing the same thing for like 5 or 10 years. They found something that I'm going to say that works, and everybody's going to say, yeah, I haven't found anything that works yet. So I keep searching. I'm telling you right now, I know people who started doing seminars and it took them a couple of years to get really good at it, and know how to put, the truth is you've got to stick with stuff and find something that makes a heck of a lot of sense. It feels like it's easy to do because you can find the right people to help you implement it, things like that, and stick with it. And then do the little things around it. Right? I know that when people do a lot of seminars, one of the things that they do is they talk about the fact that they have events with their existing clients and they have a prospect, and they're communicating that. Plus, they let the seminar marketing company go do their thing. So their combined efforts always end up being something good. And the truth is that if you're doing a seminar and you're out there making stuff happen, people love to be around people that are doing that.
That's right.
So if you're talking about it with your clients, they're excited about it. But if you've got a podcast, for instance, and you're not telling any of your clients that you have one, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up. I just, one of the things that I host is a podcast called The 99 Best Marketing Ideas for Financial Advisors. And the last 3 people that I've interviewed, now these are all big, huge producers. And I asked them one question, which is, what are marketing ideas that you think haven't worked in the past? And each of them said, I don't ever believe a marketing idea hasn't worked in the past because I either learned from it or I keep doing it until it works. And these are people who are doing...
We got to have one of those bells or alarms, right? Yeah. Who's the guy that rings the big bell? He's
Jim Cramer?
Yeah. I mean, we're not nearly as cool as that. I meant, when I said cool, I meant, I don't know what I meant, but maybe not cool, but nuts. Something like that.
He's explosive. I'll give you that.
I got to tell you something. I really hope that nobody, I mean, we're an odd pair to listen to on a podcast because I speak so slow most of the time that people want to hit that fast forward thing where you listen to it at 1 or 2 times the speed. But if they do that with you, there was a part about 2 minutes ago where I swear you sounded like Alvin from the Chipmunks. It's an incredible gift that you can talk that fast. Oh. My oldest boy can sing along with Eminem, and it blows my mind. I'm like, not a chance I could even come like half of that cadence. Anyway, I thought that was really funny because I was like, if somebody has this podcast on fast forward right now, there's no way they're going to understand what Matt just said.
Well, does that mean I need to slow down what I just said? But
I don't know, man. Just be yourself. But there's no way I'm going to go back for fun and listen to that part.
So on the 2 times speed, that's awesome. That's how I listen to podcasts, by the way. Hey, okay. Well, we're already getting north on time here, and you have 4 actionable steps to this perfect marketing strategy. So let's switch gears. So we just explained to everybody what.
No, we got to finish this, man. We got to do this.
All right.
Okay. So what is perfection? Less investment.
Right. So break down less investment. You do more sales.
I already did that. I said, if you got to go hire 2 people to do this marketing strategy that's actually decent in your office, and one cost, $60,000 because you got to get somebody pretty good and smart, and then somebody who's going to be the implementer beside them, who's maybe $30,000, you're looking at $100K. Mm-hmm. And do they know what you could outsource somebody else to do? advisors get so freaked out about cost sometimes. You got to put this stuff into perspective. If you want to have good marketing, you got to have people to do it. Are you going to hire good people, or are you going to outsource to good people? Figure it out. If you're big enough, you can hire for sure. Then you can probably supplement too with some outsourcing, certain skills that you don't want to hire for, and then have other people run the rest.
Well, Kirk, there's all of those books out there, the 4-Hour Work Week, blah, 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 blah. And if you look at those, they're all the same thing. They go exactly, you hire or outsource to people who can do what you can do, but shouldn't do, and they're going to do it better than you anyway. This is no different. I love it. So NerdWallet and the new Gen X advisor stuff that's out there, there's all sorts of stuff about that. And there are younger advisors who are outsourcing so much stuff now that allows them, one, to have a great quality of life. So they're not working 90 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Two, that their stuff is so much better because they've hired and outsourced to the right people. And three, they're growing at the rate that they want to grow, whether that's, them making $1 million a year or $250,000 a year. They're looking at what do they need and want. It's not that, hey, I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's just a very, very different philosophy. And I wish some of our older advisors would adopt that philosophy and realize that, time is the only resource we can't get back. We can't make more of. Yeah. And so protect that time.
I've also noticed that some advisors that we've come across over the years that spend a lot of money, I find sometimes they get kind of stuck in used to spending that much money, and their margins have come down from that. Like they've got momentum, but the momentum's kind of slow. I like saying momentum versus ROI all the time, you guys. I'm going to say it a whole bunch more in this podcast, but you learn from everything you're doing, but always be looking for ways to be more efficient, because efficient can be more effective, and sometimes can also be less expensive, which is a good thing, right? So another one is less trial and error for that's perfection to me. Like, find something that makes a lot of sense, sounds right, and go with it. Stop changing. You learn from it for sure. So trial and error and learn and get better is fine, but trial and error is in, I'm going to do these completely different things, and they got to set each of them up. There's so many some cost to try and getting established to do something completely different. So figure that out. The other one is more talent and more intelligence. If you have more talent available and more intelligence for marketing, that makes it for a much better strategy, because you can get better and learn from it, or do the right things right at the gate. Better, not necessarily newer. So I just kind of mentioned that in 30 seconds ago, which is the idea that if you're doing something, always be open to finding better ways to do it or achieve it. Not necessarily newer, but sometimes it can be newer. I heard of a group of advisors the other day who had anointed one of the younger advisors in the group. I think it's 5 or 6 advisors. They anointed one of the younger people to look to run their social media and to keep an eye out for new marketing ideas. But apparently they squashed his new marketing ideas quite quickly. But he had reached out to talk to me about what we're doing, and he had mentioned in that call. And I'm not trying to obviously not going to name names, but or not trying to be mean, but this group of advisors who have been in the business, we'll call them senior advisors, were doing a conference call on a monthly basis with their clients, talking about market updates. There was no interaction. It was one voice reading a script on a call, no interaction. And he said, boring as can be. And they have a time slot for it. So not many people, somewhere between not many and nobody, are showing up, and they think it's a really good exercise because it's cheap. And that's really happening, man. This 2019, they got it, and this young guy is like, well, I'm going to do my best to try to speak with these guys and try to get them to open up to some other opportunities, but I can't make any promises because that's how difficult it is. And they really love doing this conference call at a certain time of the week, and barely anybody to nobody is showing up, and they're in love with it.
Well, that goes, even back to one of the other philosophies that we have too, that seems to be the best marketing, is it's not about you, right? And that's exactly what that problem is it's about the advisors spewing their, thought leadership instead of having it be very client focused and being very much about the whiff and what's in it for me from the client's perspective. The last thing about perfection is fun. Now, as you guys can tell, Kirk and I have a lot of fun in the podcast. I absolutely love doing podcasting. This is what I get up for in the morning. Yeah, it's fun, doing all of those other stuff, helping Kirk run the business and all of those things. But, I absolutely love doing this. If you hate doing something that's marketing, you need to stop doing it immediately. But if you're having a good time with it at all, whether that's going to networking events, podcasting, writing, blogging, being on the radio, doing seminars, it's energy giving instead of energy draining. That's really, in my opinion, the most perfect marketing you can have. What do you think, Kirk?
Oh, 100%. It's, if you can feel good about anything in your business, right? Whether it's all the people you work with, how much fun you're having marketing, how much you enjoy your clients and what they, the energy they bring. It's absolutely critical all the time. We were talking to, going through a brand discovery session, I think a couple weeks ago with a guy, and he says that we have a no dicks policy. And I don't think he meant no men, pardon me. He meant no assholes, I guess.
Yeah.
I have not started drinking the beer, but it's Vaynerchuk always says, the more you be yourself, the more you attract people to you. So we're giving her a whirl here today. And I think it's true. Sometimes people and things happen and people freak out and they're just not nice, or they're having bad days all the time. It brings your company down. We experienced that recently.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're not good people, but you want clients who are just happy and bring energy to everybody, because you can each feed off the energy and always produces better outcomes.
Yeah.
And some of the times the outcome is just enjoying yourself at work, right?
And that's worth something, right? I mean, goodness gracious, if you go home every day feeling like you've been punished, what are you doing? I mean, is it worth the money? I know a lot of advisors make good money, but personally, I would rather try to have a better quality of life than I would, roll in in a Rolls Royce or something like that.
So we haven't even started talking about the 4 steps. And what are we, 20 minutes in?
Almost 30. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the 4 steps.
Number 1 is credibility. So number 1 is, I call it, credibility is the word, but it's really marketing credibility. Like, how can you achieve credibility through your marketing? You can achieve it other ways too. So how do you build it? You have a great office, one that's easy to get to, one that's convenient, one where you walk in, you feel special. So a good client experience where everybody's dressed in a way that makes them feel good or comfortable. And you have great marketing, nice beverages, nice art. You have a process that you take everybody through and everybody feels they know. You have great communications, client support. All these things build credibility. But the first thing that builds credibility, and I don't think advisors really give enough credence to this, is your marketing. Because your marketing is in almost every case imaginable, especially these days, the first thing that people see about you. And is your marketing is showcasing a better you or a lesser you? And I got to tell you, most advisors I ever meet with, I think it's a lesser you.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of really good advisors whose marketing is not as good as they are. And I also meet advisors who have better marketing that exceeds what they're actually about, which is a bad thing too, to a degree.
I don't know if I've ever heard you say that way, that their marketing isn't as good as they are. All of you listening to this need to think about that point right there. Is what you have that's client facing, is your everything that has to do with your marketing, from your business cards, to your logo, to your website, to your message, to your process, to your infographics, to any of those things, do they succinctly communicate what really truly makes you unique and different? And I would say most of you have not put the time nor the effort nor the finances behind taking what makes you unique and different and putting it out there so that people can feel you, experience you, and understand who you are before they ever walk in the door.
Well, 5 years ago, I experienced this really odd trend in financial marketing. And it was a whole bunch of advisors in my mind, a certain style, and what they were doing, what they were talking to me about and feeling very strongly about was that almost like the anti-nice marketing was what was going to work. I don't want to be that advisor who tries to look flashy. I'm so good at what I do that I'm going to buck the trend of what all these everybody trying to tell me I need to have a nicer website, a strong brand, and I don't need that to be successful. Look what I've done up to this point. I've have a good practice. I've run 150 million, blah blah blah. I've got, and it was really a weird. It was a weird little. It happened for a couple of years. I was getting, and it seemed to be building steam because I heard it more. I don't hear it anymore, but it was a weird little trend. And I said, well, 5 years ago. And I just maybe it happened to be a bunch of advisors I was meeting who were against it, and I was meeting talking about other things, but it was weird. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, because it didn't work, right? I mean, that's it. I believe it's as simple as that. I remember that too, because I was coaching a bunch of successful advisors at that point, and they were trying to do anti-marketing, which is I think what they called it. And there must have been somebody who wrote an article about it. We should probably try to find that. But yeah, that was utterly ridiculous. But that really goes with the next step, right? Well, actually, on the next 3 steps, which is awesome that you just brought that up. But the next step we've talked about and really kind of beat into the ground here. But if you don't figure it out, we don't really know what else to tell you, which is the overall niche. The days of a generalist are less and less and less. In fact, if you look at the physicians market, the general practice physicians are getting less and less. And what they are now is they're all PAs and things like that. So physicians are going into specialties. You are that physician. You should be going into a specialty. And if you want to have a generalist in your office, that should be an associate wealth advisor. What do you think?
Yes, this has dual meaning to it, niche, right? It's niche, your niche expertise. And then there's the niche audience that's going, that expertise is going to most resonate with, right? So you need to have a clearly defined target audience, and you need to clearly define strength and focus in your practice. And you need to, so how do you, the first thing that I say, how do you define a niche is, first thing before you define it is you want to do the math. What I mean by that is, do you want to do way better with a smaller group of people that you can easily find and replicate? Or do you want to have way less of an impact, resonate less, therefore you got to fight harder and meet even more people with just anyone? And I rarely ever, like, you start trying to put numbers down on paper, but how more effective and deeply you can go, it's pretty easy to do the math and figure out that if you have a niche. I was talking to a company yesterday, they want to work with a local hospital. There's 15,000 employees in the hospital. When I did a quick search through my LinkedIn, I could find through second and third connections. I know you can't go after third connections in LinkedIn, but because I don't know anybody in that area, I would have less. I easily found 7,000 that were on LinkedIn from that hospital, right? So I can easily find and communicate with those people. But most advisors haven't defined some kind of manner, a niche, or how to go find people in a way that they can do that. But this company knows that they could go after these clients for years and years and years. And there's so many high-end roles in a hospital, as an example, right? They said there's no other advisors going after it. I'm not going to say where they're at because
that's fair.
But So So do the math. The other one's be resourceful. Like that's super resourceful, right? They've identified something in their community that a marketer might not know, but what they should be able to identify. So be resourceful when you're thinking about finding a niche, either what you're good at or who you want to work with. Look inward. What are you really good at? Who do you really want to work with? You got to ask yourself some big questions. And this other one, I say be ruthless. What I mean by that is targeting people is not a bad thing. I think some people have a weird guilt with it sometimes. And then be ruthless in your business. Like be ruthless and go for the profit. Stop worrying about the little profit that's on the side you're going to lose and focus on the big profit that's in that vertical. So be almost like being ruthless to yourself.
Sure.
Go for it. So those are, some pretty quick snippets about how important having a niche is. And that's step 2 to the perfect marketing strategy.
Right.
And you don't have that, good luck.
Well, right, because it's going to be difficult for the next one here, which is exposure. Because if you don't have a target, I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, but it's like going out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean with a net and throwing it somewhere and hope you catch the right thing, right? If you don't have a niche, if you don't have a focus, then it's going to be really, really hard for you to get appropriate exposure. Elaborate.
Yeah. So here's the test. Go into LinkedIn. If you've got Sales Navigator, look at advanced search. If you don't, just do the regular search and try to see if you can find 5,000 people or 3,000 or something like that. Somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people that you can identify there that you would like to connect with, and that would give you an opportunity to really grow your business. See if you can go find a bunch of people. And if you can't, then you got to figure stuff like that out. If you're going to expose yourself, you got to be everywhere that your audience would be hanging out. So think about that. How do you achieve that? Online, in person, via your clients. In other words, ask them for referrals. Don't ask for referrals. Ask them to share your episode with people. That's an incredibly simple way to do that. Via centers of influence, same thing. Go to center of influence. Say, I've just did a podcast on this. How many of do you know anybody in your client base that would benefit from knowing what I talked about? Heck yes, I would. By the way, I'd love to have you on a podcast next week. Are you around? Absolutely. Let's do it. At events. Are you going to events? Are you doing events? Are you talking about the things that you're doing in your events? Right? Don't sell, educate, help people everywhere you go. If you're helpful, generous, provide a ton of value. I've told you before, the greater the specificity you can have with your niche, the more value you can create, and the more valuable you are, and you'll get more clients just from that fact. Not even the fact that you're going after that, you know where to find those people, but the fact that you create so much value means you're going to be more referable, and you got way more points of value to refer to. This stuff creates momentum like crazy, and advisors are, doing this, doing that. I started this, stop that, changing this, change that. I believe in this, but I don't believe in that. Or I have money for this, I don't have money for that. You got to get this stuff together. You got to pay attention to these 4 steps and do well at them, and slowly, figure this stuff out, or quickly.
Well, and so credibility, niche, exposure, right? So those are the first 3 steps. Let's wrap up today with talking a little bit more about influence and really what we mean by influence and how one achieves whatever level of influence they want.
Yeah, so influence is about being there, talking to the right people with the right kind of information as generously as you possibly can, and being there for a long enough period of time. This is why you got to stick with stuff that people know you're there and you've been around, and your name just keeps popping up. And guess what? That makes you more of an authority. When an ideal prospect calls us up and says, it's like talking to a star because I listened to all your podcasts. I love them. You guys are amazing. That's a good thing to have in your business, right? It's a lot of fun. Gets you really jacked up. Makes you feel you're smarter than you probably are. That's fine. But here's some ways to achieve that. You got to have a good brand, right? You got to be memorable, and you got to resonate. You got to be intriguing, and you got to figure that stuff out, because if you're not, you're just killing your ability to have authority, which is all the hard work you're trying to get towards, right? That's a big outcome or a milestone for everybody. How do we become an authority? We call it micro-influencer here, because authority in a smaller area with a smaller group of people that you want to work with, and according to your special area of specialization, right? Next one is personality. You got to be yourself. People are always going to be attracted to who you are, not just what you know. So if you can't be yourself, you can't attract as many people. So you got to be yourself, and you got to have personality. That's why we love podcasting, because it's so easy to showcase your personality. Although I think we got to keep doing a better job of helping our advisors showcase personality in their podcasts. But I think they're a little remiss at doing that. The other way you achieve authority and influence is through generosity. You got to share all the time. That's really huge. And share as much as you can. This is not a game of cat and mouse with people, or bait and switch where you're trying to not give them much of what you know. Tell them everything you know. That's how you become wanted and desired and so important in somebody's world, is when they realize that you know a lot. And it also changes the game of the landscape, of the competitive landscape, when you have done so much work to be an incredible financial advisor, and you're keeping that a big secret until they come into your office and experience you for a year. Figure out how to take all that wisdom and experience, put out into the world, so that they know you're the greatest of all time, right? You got to. If you're not doing that, you're wasting time. All that money you put into your CFP, all those clients you work with, all the financial planning talent, the paraplanners, whatever that you put it, all that time, effort, all the solutions providers that you talked to and pushed away and kept the best ones, all that. If people don't understand all that stuff, how can you possibly be great at marketing? You got to be generously sharing that stuff all the time. And the last one about achieving influence is you got to be an expert. And this goes along with what I just said. You got to be as valuable as you possibly can to the people that you love working with the most. If you can't be more valuable than everybody else, it's just a crapshoot whether or not you're going to get the business. And I think that's how 90% of advisors are rolling.
Amen to that, brother.
Flatlining. I'm going to show you a chart. Look on my LinkedIn. I'm going to show you a chart I just created. It's one of those back of the napkin drawings, except it's a behind me whiteboard drawing. And I had so much fun drawing this thing, and I shared it with internally, and everybody loves it. And it's basically a drawing that kind of depicts everything we talked about today.
Yeah.
It's about if you do these 4 things, you can't help but create a ton of momentum in your business. And if you want to sit there and measure ROI every step of the way, my guess is when you haven't created enough momentum to achieve the ROI you want, you're going to stop and move on to the next thing. So I tell everybody, stop talking about ROI, create momentum, and never stop creating it. Everything will take care of itself. If you don't believe in momentum, oh boy.
Well, it's simple physics, to be honest. A lot of our listeners love math, right? It's escape velocity. There's so much energy that you have to have in order to escape the atmosphere, or to be able to achieve unbelievable greatness. That's the sort of stuff that Kirk and I are talking about today. What can we do? What can you do? What are the mindsets that you need to have for a great, perfect marketing strategy? And a lot of it is that momentum. A lot of it is that escape velocity. It can take you anywhere from 7 to 10 years to do this if you do it on your own. If you don't want to wait that long, and most of you are terrifically impatient, if you listen to our podcast, if you download the white papers that we write, and if you potentially decide at some point that you want to utilize us, we can cut that 10 years down to 3, right? So where do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. Do you want people coming in and ready to do business, or do you want to have to go through all those terrible sales things that you learned when you were doing the 10,000 dials a week, right? That's the sort of stuff that we want you to consider and focus. And that's why we're so passionate about what we do, how we do it, and why it's so important for you to grow your business. Kirk, closing statement.
We use the word perfect. And we talked about what is perfection. And the truth is that's a really crappy word. It's a great word for a title, but it's a crappy ideal, right? So you're always looking to get better all the time. So don't take this as the pursuit, the strategy is the pursuit of perfection, but think about how this kind of marketing that you can build can create the perfect practice for yourself, which is achieving all those things that lead towards having the perfect marketing strategy. I just want to be clear there that we're not looking for perfectionism. You're looking for momentum, and that is perfect. Momentum is absolutely perfect. The energy that you can tell from when I first started podcasting to where we're at now is because of the momentum that we've created in our business from doing really good work for people. And this podcast has been the savior in my business. It's been unequivocally the best decision I've ever made is you and I doing this podcast.
Yep. Amen to that. I absolutely agree. Okay, everybody. So if you have not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe now button below. And if you want to talk to Kirk or I, all you have to do is email us at kirk@topadvisorm, that M is for marketing.com, or matt@topadvisormmarketing.com. Or connect with us on LinkedIn. We're both fiercely active on LinkedIn, always posting fun stuff and communicating and having fun, wishing people happy birthdays and saying congratulations, because we really, truly believe that, it is really about relationships, and that's really what we're about building. If you have not given us a review on iTunes yet, we'd really appreciate that, even though that we are in the third top blog in our industry. So we're creeping up there. We're going to be number one sooner rather than later. And finally, if you have any topic ideas or guest suggestions for the podcast, go ahead and email me directly at matt@topadvisorm, that M is for marketing.com. So for Kirk Lowe and everybody here at Top Advisor Marketing, we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Are you ready to change the way you communicate with your clients? Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your area? Learn how to become a prolific online influencer, attract more ideal clients, and grow your business. Contact us today and see what the power of podcasting can do for your business. Click on the Contact Us link on our website at topadvisormarketing.com and set up a call to learn more. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook for more updates and information.
This was brought to you by Iris.xyz, a platform helping financial professionals become better in business and life through new media and new voices. Visit them and learn more at iris.xyz.